Being presented with it and sleeping on it, quote unquote, is allowing yourself to have that decision making, or do you think that you already made the decision immediately after proposed?
I think you do consider things and actually decide based on thinking. It depends on how fast the decision has to be made.
Yeah.
It's like a computer, it's like a chess computer, giving it time to think to allow it to analyze further moves into the future. You know, it still hasn't made the decision necessarily beforehand, it's just giving more time to come up with that decision. Same sort of principle.
When I play the computer in a game of chess, and I give, I can pick what level do I want to play, 1 to 10. I play it around level 6 because otherwise the computer whoops my butt, and I would rather win. So I leave it at level 6, and that way I have a tough game, but I can win. And am I setting the level of free will that the computer has?
Well, you're telling the computer how long that is to think.
I suppose, yeah.
But you are allowing it to think.
How many moves in advance are they?
If you told it what moves to, like, not giving it free will would basically just be telling it what moves it can make and what it can't make. At least having time to think is a form of free will, in my opinion.
Interesting. Well, I do have to move on, though. I was going to point out that I don't know if I'll find this or not. Oh, that's close enough. But basically, there's a point in the Confessions where the Confessions is great literature and well worth reading. And it's a biography of his life, although he's written it as a bishop, so he's writing it backwards, and so he has a target audience, other Christians, and he's basically explaining the choices he made from that perspective. That I started out not as a Christian, was evil as a kid. A whole bunch of us, one day stole pears from the farmer. We didn't even eat the pears; we gave them to the pigs. We were just evil. We were being mean. And he's puzzling over why do people do things like that. Where does that come in to play? But also, he's amazed at plays and how, he knows the play is fiction, and yet at the same time it arouses so much emotion. He cries as a result of, what happens in the play and so on. So it's interesting stuff. And then he goes on to, explain how he's in Milan and he's studying with Ambrose, and Ambrose has a book that he's been reading, and at some point he's in the garden, he's all confused. I mean, people do this, when you're going from, various, narratives to a more, developed narrative, and your understanding changes how you view life and so on. I think we all go through this, it's a very important experience for us. You almost place what age you're in, when it happens. And he's going through that it's a conversion experience, and he's literally in the garden and he hears these children's voices and he doesn't really know where they are, but they're saying, take up and read, take up and read. And so he just goes back and he picks up the book and he just flips it open and reads what, shows up, and it's put on, Jesus, give up the things of the flesh and so on, one of Paul's letters. And he thinks, that's speaking directly to me. And at that point, he decides to become Christian. And then his friend comes over, Alytus, I think his name was, and he read further, and it also points out, and take your friend with you. Something like that. And so it's like, oh, so the two of them end up becoming catechisists. They go to learn what they need to in order to be baptized. So it's neat literature, and maybe even the first book called The Confessions of. We've got lots of those. And it's also the book where he talks about the nature of time, and I kind of gave a quick version of that. It's absolutely neat, trying to figure out what time is, and how, when you ask people what time is, we still get all kinds of opinions, and you just feel like none of them are really all encompassing. They don't really explain it. I mean, that's clearly something we experience, and yet at the same time, we've got models to explain it, clocks and things, relatively new historical devices, actually, although you've got things like the Stonehenge and other henges. It just means, you've got a cross piece, a henge. But they're clearly meant to follow stars. Clearly as the sun rises on a particular day, right in between those two stones lined up with this stone. Wow, considering how old that was, and how, you've seen the jokes about, when you've got, winter savings time, or and everybody's out there trying to move the stones. That's just dumb. It's a joke. I didn't do it very well either. You have to actually see it, I guess. But so the Confessions, pretty interesting book. That's a recommendation, and it is on the web, so it's you can always go buy a copy if you want. They still sell them, but at the same time, there's multiple versions on the web, so you don't have to do that. Then the other one that's really significant is The City of God. City of God, it's actually City of God, City of Men. So what's going on in the book, The City of God, the City of Men? Well, you're probably aware that certain Romans, Nero, others, blamed the Christians for problems that happened in Rome. But further, when the so-called barbarians sacked Rome, there was an argument that it was caused by the Christians. And what's kind of odd about this is and by the way, Gibbon writes in The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire that the Roman Empire declined and fell. And actually, if you look at history, what happened, the Roman Empire is still there. It never really went away. It goes through political changes and different leadership and so on. But heck, there's a flag flying across the Glen Highway from where I live in Eagle River that belongs to the Vatican, which is essentially the Roman Empire still. And the Pope is actually the Emperor. The name, the Pontiff, is what the Roman Emperor was called. And the Pontiff is the bridge between the eternal and the physical. So you still have one. And I thought it was neat that the other day he complained that Vance, J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, who was speaking theologically, in Europe, and saying that, it's only right as Christians to love your family, then to love your children, your family, your community. In other words, you have a priority of who you should love. And the Pope came in and said, no, that's not Christian theology at all. You're supposed to love everyone, love your neighbor as yourself. So there's not supposed to be such a priority. You're supposed to love everyone somehow. We even argued this, a bunch of my friends and I. There's no way for you to do that, actually. If you only have $5, you're going to feed your family first. You're not going to, donate it and let your family starve. Just common sense. Mice do this. They treat one another better the closer they are genetically. It's just nature, I suppose. But so the pontiff is still there and still criticizing people worldwide for their behavior, etc. As is his job, basically. In any case, Augustine defends the Christians against this charge that Christianity was at fault for the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. There's lots of different arguments of why. One argument is that by becoming a Christian, you no longer want to be a warrior, because you do want to love others the same, turn the other cheek, etc. But Augustine argues, the city of men is what Rome was, right? And where it was successful, and it was, obviously, for hundreds of years, the Roman Empire was successful, and actually still would be, because the so-called barbarians that came in and sacked Rome were actually the paid military force, because once Rome got to a certain wealth, they didn't want to fight anymore, so they basically hired mercenaries who were the violent northern Germans, really, but by the time they became mercenaries, they were actually already Christians. So even though there was a Christian barbarian overthrow of Rome, they sacked Rome. Why should we just, fight for what you pay us? We'll just take, there's no defense. We're your force, so we're coming in and we'll just take over. And they did. And in fact, eventually, where Augustine was in Hippo was sacked the same way. I don't know if you saw, I have a link to a movie that kind of talks about that and so on. But he argues, so basically the empire was overthrown, but by other Christians who were actually part of the empire. So, what's the fluctuation then? I mean, you still end up with Christians, whether they're followers of Arius or they're followers of Athanasius. That's your big split, really, in the main groups. There's other heresies associated with it. In fact, Augustine is one of the ones that leads the way in arguing for the dogma that would eventually become really the accepted dogma still today, for the most part. But the argument then he has is that, the reason Rome was successful is because many of the principles that they followed were actually Christian principles. But they were also very hedonistic, and it's those things that actually caused the empire to fall. If they were more Christian and it was more like a city of God, one that was a Christian city, and they did these things, and basically describes, if you're in the city of God, this is how people should live with one another. And in that kind of city, the fall wouldn't have happened. So basically it's a defense that if actually Rome had been Christian, the fall wouldn't have happened. So it's kind of an interesting political argument, but also an interesting description of how he visioned what a Christian society would be like. So kind of an important book, of course. Still famous. Pertinent. I mean, we're You know, we've got lots of folks that say what we ought to do is become more Christian. Well, how ought a society be that way? You know, really. But the quiz question I have for today is, what do you think of the relationship between the music that Plotinus talks about and Augustine? And I really should go. I never even signed in. Let me go. I have links, and I might not be able to find them otherwise. What am I trying to get out of here? Taylor Swift. All right. So the quiz question. Remember last quiz question was, what do you think we have free will? This one is, was Augustine's theory of music similar to that of Plotinus? Yes and no is your correct answer, by the way. But please do research it and see what you think. But I do have an interesting link here to this is the music that Augustine's mother loved best, and it's written by Bishop Ambrose, and this style of music is called Ambrosian chant. Ambrosian chant. And one interesting aspect of it, notice, is that there's only one melodic line. Am I right? Obviously, this is a solo, so you only get one melodic line. But even when there's a chorus, they're all singing the same melody. So that's one of the characteristics. When you later go to Pope Gregory, and he codifies a new version of Gregorian chant. By codified meaning you sing these songs in the Mass in church. There's 4 parts. What musicologists will say, basically is a breakout of the 4 natural voices. I mean, there are obviously other natural voices, but you get the tenor, the bass, the soprano, and the alto, right? You can have a variety of voices in there. When we listened to Akhenaten briefly, we heard him singing with a male soprano voice, but there was kind of a natural breaking up of 4 voices. And we didn't really talk much about music, but if you go back to the earliest musics that were associated, what we think of as human, where do we go for those? The Aboriginal music, for example, we listen to those. There's significant differences from especially this. This is totally outrageously different compared to, say, Aboriginal music. You could listen to it. A lot of it's still with us in a sense, right? Where did a significant break come? It seems like Pythagoras. The Greek Pythagoras had the divided line theory, had a theory of harmony associated with that, and basically gave us a series of harmonies or notes that literally have a particular vibration, that they overlap, and you have. I mean, the way we talk about music really didn't materialize until Bach, the well-tempered clavier theory, where you end up with the structure that we use today. If you compare, say, raga music, you know what I mean by raga? Let's see, sitar. There's even one. I don't know.
You could save up to 30% when you file with us instead of a typical accountant. File with Block Advisors today.
I'm looking for sitar music, not just that. I thought that was all right. Maybe this. That sounds very westernized, actually, to me. In fact, there's other music going on behind him. But the instrument, the sitar, is capable of a range of 12 tones for every single tone that we have in the Western music. So you can there's lots more to hear, actually. Since Pythagoras, we've been limited to a very strict set of tones. There's an advantage. Sitars generally can't have harmony with other instruments while they're playing. It's a very individual instrument, because when you have that many tones, you can't create harmonies that will cooperate. But once you